She snatched the RC car right out of his hands in broad daylight. Can you imagine? A grown woman, an homeowners association board member no less, ripping a $550 hobby car from a teenager and screaming it was community property. The street went silent for a beat, then erupted with gasps. 15-year-old Dylan stood frozen, his knuckles white, his voice cracking as he shouted, "That's mine. You can't take it." His chest rose and fell too quickly, the sound of his breath sharp like broken glass. Karen, in her crisp beige cardigan and oversized sunglasses, looked down at him with that smug half-smile people in the neighborhood knew all too well. Community rules forbid unsanctioned vehicles on homeowners association property. She declared like she was pronouncing a sentence in a courtroom she thought she owned. This is contraband. Consider it impounded. What? Contraband? For a kid's RC car. The absurdity of it made Dylan's mom, Lisa, stumble forward, her voice trembling but furious. Are you out of your mind, Karen? That car is my son's birthday gift. We bought it with our money. Give it back. Now. But Karen clutched the RC car to her chest like it was the crown jewels. Her nails dug into the plastic shell and you could hear it creak under her grip. The neighbors gathering around whispered, shifting uncomfortably, but no one dared step between her and Lisa. That's the thing about Karen. People were terrified of her weaponized complaints. One phone call from her could mean a fine, a citation, a nasty letter plastered on your front door. And she thrived on it. Dylan's lip quivered. His GoPro, still strapped to his chest harness, was blinking red, recording every word, every gesture, every twisted smile Karen flashed was captured. Did she realize? No, of course not. Lisa placed a hand on her son's shoulder, steadying him. We'll deal with this, she whispered, but her voice had that trembling heat behind it. Half fury, half fear. Karen, emboldened by the silence of the crowd, lifted the RC car like a trophy. This is what happens when residents disregard the covenant rules. Your little toy is evidence of misconduct. I'll be bringing this to the board. A hiss of disbelief rippled through the small crowd. Someone muttered, "She's gone too far this time." Another voice whispered, "It's just a car." For crying out loud. And then, like fate had been biding its time, the twist struck. Dylan raised his trembling voice. Actually, Mrs. Keller. He made sure to use her full name, the way people do when they're gathering strength. You just stole private property, and I have proof. Karen blinked. Her grip loosened for a fraction of a second. Proof? What nonsense are you spewing now? Dylan tapped the small blinking camera on his chest. Beep. The sound was almost theatrical. Heads turned. Eyes widened. Smile. Dylan said softly, his voice steadier now. You're on camera. The way Karen's face drained of color. You'd think someone had just read her last will and testament out loud. She stumbled a half step back, eyes darting at the crowd, realizing too late that her performance had been captured from start to finish. Lisa exhaled sharply, almost a laugh, almost a sob. Oh, you did it. Honey, you caught her. But Karen, she wasn't finished. No, she doubled down, because of course she did. That footage is inadmissible. She barked, clutching the RC car even tighter. You recorded me without my consent. That's illegal. You'll be the one in trouble, not me. The crowd murmured again, louder this time. Someone laughed bitterly. Another neighbor, Greg, folded his arms and shook his head. She doesn't even know the law. Public confrontation. Recorded on his own property. That's fair game. Karen's voice cracked. It's harassment. You're all harassing me. Lisa stepped forward, her tone ice cold now, each word deliberate. No, Karen. This time, you harassed us. And you stole from a child. The weight of that sentence hung heavy in the humid afternoon air. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. Karen's jaw twitched. She tried to muster another rebuttal. But the edges of her confidence were unraveling fast. Her eyes darted to the GoPro, then to the crowd, then back to the GoPro. Dylan reached out his hands. "Give it back." His voice was no longer shaky. It was steady, commanding, bigger than a 15-year-old should sound. Karen hesitated. Then, in a move so audacious it left everyone stunned, she hurled the RC car onto the pavement. Crack. Plastic shattered. Wires sprang loose like entrails, and Dylan's pride and joy lay broken in pieces. Gasps. Shouts. One woman screamed, "What is wrong with you?" Dylan dropped to his knees, scooping up the wreckage with trembling hands. The sound of his sobs twisting through the neighborhood like barbed wire. His mother crouched beside him, her arms wrapping around his shoulders. Karen. She stood there with her chin raised, as if destruction was some kind of vindication. "Now it's junk. No harm. No foul. No harm." Lisa's voice cracked into a scream. "You just destroyed a $550 car." But Dylan looked up, his tear-streaked face shining with a grim sort of victory. He lifted the cracked GoPro off his chest, held it high and whispered, "It's all on here." The crowd erupted, not in chaos, but in that kind of low, angry rumble that precedes a storm. Greg stepped forward, his voice booming. "Karen, you've crossed the line for the last damn time." Within an hour, the police were called. Officers arrived, interviewed witnesses, reviewed the GoPro footage right there in the driveway. Karen's confident smirk evaporated the second the officer said, "Ma'am, this looks like theft and destruction of property." She sputtered. She clawed at excuses. "This is homeowners association business. I have authority." The officer shut her down with a shake of his head. "The homeowners association doesn't grant immunity from the law." And just like that, Karen was cited, ordered to appear in court. The footage spread like wildfire in the neighborhood group chat. Within days, someone leaked it online. The sight of an entitled homeowners association Karen screaming, clutching a child's toy and then smashing it. It was internet gasoline, and people lit the match. The twist. A neighbor nobody had paid much attention to before, quiet Mrs. Alvarez from down the block, turned out to be an attorney. She volunteered pro bono to help Lisa and Dylan press charges. "She's been harassing this community for years," Mrs. Alvarez said, her voice steady, her eyes sharp. "It's time someone stood up to her with the law, not just whispers." Court day came. Dylan, in a neat button-down, held the repaired RC car in his lap, rebuilt with the help of neighbors who chipped in parts and money. Karen, on the other hand, walked in pale and deflated, her power suit doing nothing to hide the tremor in her hands. When the footage played on the courtroom monitor, the jury's faces said it all. Shock, disgust, pity, even. Karen shrieked objections. But they only made her look more unhinged. The verdict: guilty, ordered to pay restitution, fined heavily and stripped of her homeowners association board position effective immediately. The neighborhood erupted in quiet celebration afterward. Dylan's RC car roared again in the cul-de-sac, neighbors cheering, Lisa's laughter finally free of the cracks of exhaustion. And Karen, she slunk back to her house, curtains drawn, her once feared voice reduced to a whisper no one cared to hear anymore. Justice had rolled in on 4 wheels and a GoPro lens. Because in the end, her downfall wasn't Dylan's anger, or Lisa's fury, or even the neighbor's resentment. It was Karen's own arrogance, caught in high definition, that crushed her. So tell me, wasn't that karma's perfect timing? Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. I wish I was making this up. I really do. But if you'd been there that afternoon standing under a gray sky heavy with the smell of rain, listening to a bugler's lonely notice, you'd understand why my hands were shaking. We were burying my uncle, Staff Sergeant Daniel Cole, a disabled veteran who'd survived Iraq but never fully recovered. The man had lost a leg in service, lived with chronic pain, and somehow still managed to smile like life owed him nothing. We were halfway through the eulogy when she showed up. Oh, God, I can still hear the click of her heels on the cemetery's gravel. HOA President Karen Whitmore, yes, that Karen, the one who sent threatening letters if you painted your front door the wrong shade of beige. She walked straight down the center aisle like she owned the place, holding a thick folder in one hand and that smug little smirk in the other. "Excuse me," she said loud enough to cut through the chaplain's voice. "Before this goes any further, I need to address a financial matter." Every head turned. My mother's mouth fell open. My cousin whispered, "Is she serious?" Karen planted herself right next to the casket. "The HOA board has reviewed certain invoices for the memorial reception," she continued. "And frankly, this is fraud. We demand an immediate refund." I felt my chest tighten. Fraud? At a funeral? The widow, Aunt Marlene, sweet woman, still wearing her black gloves, blinked like she'd been slapped. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice trembling. Karen flipped open her folder and waved a paper. "You billed the HOA for catering and the rental of the community hall, but these signatures," she tapped them with a red-painted nail, "are forged. This is a clear violation of HOA bylaws, and we won't stand for it." You could hear the collective gasp. Somewhere in the back, a chair scraped on concrete. "Aunt Marlene didn't forge anything." I shot back before I could stop myself. "The board approved the memorial use weeks ago. Daniel was an honored resident." Karen cut me off with a laugh. "A laugh? Approved? Please. The signatures here are obvious fakes. I've already spoken to our attorney about filing a lawsuit. If I don't see cooperation, this will go public." The audacity was so staggering it was almost comical. Almost. But then I noticed something. Her evidence was on HOA letterhead that had been discontinued last year. And the signatures she was waving around? They didn't even match the board's current members. Oh, I knew what this was. Karen had tried to block the reception booking weeks earlier, claiming the noise and extra cars would disturb the neighborhood. She'd lost that vote and she'd been simmering ever since. Now she was trying to humiliate Aunt Marlene in front of every friend, every veteran, every grieving soul present. I took a slow breath. My voice was shaking, but not from fear. "Karen, why don't you tell everyone here who actually signed those approvals?" Her smile faltered. "The point is, these documents." "No, the point," I said, stepping toward her, "is that those are your own forged papers. Funny how the signatures are in the same pen you use for HOA notices. Funny how you're the only one with access to that outdated stationery." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." Another said, "She's in trouble." Karen's cheeks flushed crimson. "That's absurd. You have no proof." "Don't I?" I pulled out my phone. I'd already photographed the real approval form signed by 3 current board members because I'd been expecting her to pull something like this. "Here's the actual document. Dated, time-stamped, verified. The one you're holding." I glanced at it. "Not only is it a fake, it's a fraud that could land you in court." Her eyes darted, calculating. The chaplain cleared his throat, his patience clearly gone. "Ma'am, this is a funeral service. You're disturbing the peace." But Karen wasn't done digging her own grave. "I have every right to reclaim HOA funds," she snapped. "If this family thinks they can exploit the community." That was it. The veterans in attendance, men and women in uniform, rose from their seats. One of them, a broad-shouldered Marine with a chest full of ribbons, stepped forward. "Ma'am, you need to leave. Now." Karen sputtered, but when 2 more veterans closed in, she backed up fast. Her heels slipped on the wet gravel, and for one glorious second, I thought she might land right in the mud. Instead, she caught herself, then tried one last jab. "This isn't over. You'll be hearing from my lawyer." "Good," I called after her. We'll be hearing from yours too when we file our own lawsuit for defamation and fraud. See you in court." She stopped cold, half-turned, but something in my tone must have told her I meant it. She left without another word, the click of her heels fading into the sound of the bugle starting again. The rest of the service it was quieter, heavy, but there was a strange solidarity in that crowd now, like everyone had just witnessed the same lightning strike and knew the storm wasn't over. Later, at the reception she tried to stop, Aunt Marlene pulled me aside. "She's not going to just let this go, you know," she whispered. I nodded. "I'm counting on it." Because what Karen didn't know yet was that one of the board members she'd alienated months ago had already sent me emails. Emails showing her little habit of revising HOA expense reports. Emails that smelled a lot like embezzlement. And if she thought forging a signature was going to be her big play, she was about to find out what a real counterattack looked like. A week later, the lawsuit papers went out, only they weren't from Karen. They were from us. Defamation, fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and, thanks to the board members' cooperation, a nice fat count of HOA fund misappropriation. When the process server knocked on her door, Karen apparently tried to slam it shut. Didn't work. She had to sign for it. Word spread faster than wildfire in July, neighbors whispering at the mailbox, veterans sharing the news at the diner. People who'd once rolled their eyes at Karen's antics now kept their doors locked and their conversations short. 2 weeks later, during the preliminary hearing, Karen showed up in a beige pantsuit like she was attending a garden club brunch. Not a fraud case. Her lawyer did most of the talking, but the judge was not amused. Especially when we presented those revised HOA expense reports showing thousands in questionable miscellaneous charges. She blustered. She cried. At one point she even claimed, "I only forged those documents to protect the HOA." The judge's eyebrow went up so high I thought it might leave his forehead. The best part? The HOA board, finally embarrassed enough to act, voted her out unanimously before the case even reached trial. She was no longer president, no longer allowed on the community property without permission. By the time the court date came, she'd been stripped of every scrap of power she'd used to terrorize neighbors. The verdict? She was ordered to pay damages to Aunt Marlene, cover all legal fees, and submit to an audit of every HOA transaction she'd handled in the last 5 years. The auditors found more creative accounting than a Vegas casino, and the state attorney got involved. Karen's face when they read the judgment, I'll never forget it. That mix of disbelief and humiliation, like the world had suddenly stopped playing by her rules. Walking out of the courthouse, Aunt Marlene squeezed my hand. "Daniel would have been proud," she said softly. I glanced up at the pale winter sky. "Yeah," I murmured. "This one's for him." That night, the neighborhood felt different. Lighter. People waved more. Someone even brought over a casserole just to celebrate the end of the reign of terror. As for Karen, she moved out within a month. Rumor is she's renting an apartment in another county, still telling anyone who'll listen that she was the victim of a smear campaign. But here's the thing: when you crash a veteran's funeral, forge documents, and commit fraud against the very people you claim to serve, your downfall isn't a smear, it's justice. And if you ever find yourself dealing with someone like her, remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't yelling back in the moment. Sometimes it's letting the truth do the yelling for you in front of a judge. If you enjoyed hearing how this lawsuit turned the tables on a bully, subscribe to my YouTube channel for more unbelievable but true HOA karma stories. I was holding a coffee in one hand and my hospital badge in the other when I saw the water lapping at my boots. It wasn't a puddle. It wasn't even rain. It was a flood, spreading like a nasty rumor, only it was real, rising fast, and headed straight toward the ER bay. "What the hell?" I muttered, heart pounding. Overnight shift at the county hospital is brutal enough without the parking lot turning into a lake. I sprinted toward the emergency entrance, the sound of water sloshing against tires echoing behind me. Nurses in scrubs were waving their arms at the ambulance that had just pulled up, now half submerged. We had patients being rolled out on stretchers, diabetics, stroke victims, and water climbing around their gurney wheels. And where was it coming from? Check the storm drain, someone yelled. It's not draining. It wasn't. It was gushing. It took less than 5 minutes before we realized this wasn't an accident. This was sabotage. And then someone whispered the name like it was a curse. Karen. Yeah. Her again. Karen Witherspoon, president of the HOA for the Ridgeway Heights development across the street from the hospital. You'd think a woman living in a gated community with manicured hedges and fountains that played Mozart would have better things to do than wage war on a hospital. But no, not this Karen. She hated the ambulances, said they were too loud. She hated patients walking through her streets, said they brought crime. She hated nurses parking in overflow spaces near her wall spaces that didn't even belong to the HOA. I warned them, she said last month during an HOA meeting, eyes squinting like she'd rehearsed it in the mirror. If they don't stay out of Ridgeway Heights, I'll make them regret it. No one took her seriously, until the backflow valve at the hospital's drainage system was found cut. Until a pipe leading from the HOA's irrigation system had been illegally redirected into our storm drain intake, essentially reversing the flow flooding us. On purpose. We didn't know all the details yet, but you didn't need to be a detective. She'd been ranting for weeks, and now here we were with 5 cars underwater, 2 ambulances rerouted, and a cancer patient's chemo appointment canceled. The worst part? She tried to leave. Not kidding, just 30 minutes into the chaos. A Ridgeway Heights golf cart came buzzing down the street. Yep, Karen. Sunglasses, visor, arms crossed, looking smug as hell. Y'all should invest in better infrastructure, she said, glancing at the rising water like it was beneath her. A nurse shouted, "We have patients stuck in there." Karen smirked. Not my problem. That's when a firefighter named Marco, God bless him, stormed over and said, "It will be your problem when we find your HOA water lines spliced into ours." Her smile twitched. Excuse me, but we weren't letting this go. Not this time. Too much damage. Too many lives disrupted. I called dispatch. We need city engineers. Now. And bring code enforcement. While we waited, the water kept climbing. A technician slipped and sprained his wrist trying to wade through it. A diabetic patient fainted from stress. I swear I could hear Karen humming, like this was a victory. And then sirens. Not ambulances this time. Fire crews. 2 big red trucks pulled up and the firefighters didn't waste a second. They brought industrial pumps and slammed them into position like they'd been waiting for this moment. You should have seen the water fly. The roar of the machines shook the pavement. Hoses blasted the flood away from the ER and into the emergency overflow reservoir. You'd think the cavalry had arrived. Karen started backing up literally. Her golf cart jolted and reversed. "Where do you think you're going?" I asked, stepping into her path. She glared. "I didn't do anything." I pointed at the spliced pipe now visible under the curb, water still dribbling out of it. "That your handiwork? That's on your side of the street." Marco chimed in, holding up a soaked blueprint map the city inspector had just handed him. "Actually, this pipe originates from Ridgeway Heights. Unauthorized connection. You're gonna need a lawyer." That's when her face cracked. She turned to run on foot this time, but slipped in a puddle and landed flat on her, but with a splat. I shouldn't have laughed, but come on. Karma has a sense of humor. People cheered. I'm not even kidding. One of the nurses clapped. A patient in a wheelchair actually chuckled through his oxygen mask. And Karen? She sat there, soaked and sputtering, her visor floating next to her. "Oh, please," she snapped, trying to stand. "You can't prove anything." But oh, we could. City engineers showed up with full gear. They traced the tampered lines. Found camera footage from a neighbor's Ring doorbell showing Karen directing 2 landscapers with shovels toward the property line. The twist? One of those landscapers was actually an undercover city compliance agent. Boom. Apparently, this wasn't the first time Karen had tampered with infrastructure. There was a sealed complaint from a year ago involving a school zone sign being removed from in front of her community to reduce traffic. It had nearly caused a child to be hit. She'd gotten a warning then. She wasn't getting a warning now. Marco walked over with a clipboard. "Karen Witherspoon, You are under investigation for felony public endangerment, property damage, and obstruction of emergency services. She paled. You're not even real police. He flashed his ID. I'm with the state fire marshal's office. We're deputized. And guess what? You're on camera. By the time the sheriff arrived, Karen was sobbing into a towel and muttering something about her lawyer husband being on vacation in Aruba. The sheriff just said, he better fly back fast. Couldn't believe it. After months of her threatening us, harassing patients, calling the cops on nurses for loitering, and trying to ban ambulances from using the road next to her HOA, she'd finally stepped in it, deep, and she was sinking fast. It didn't take long for the news to blow up. By noon, a local news van was camped outside the ER entrance. Cameras zoomed in on the drained parking lot and the police cruiser with Karen sobbing in the back seat. The headline practically wrote itself, HOA president causes hospital flood facing lawsuit and felony charges. But the real heat didn't come from the media. It came from her own HOA. Turns out, she hadn't told anyone about the pipe stunt. Not the board. Not the community. When the HOA council members were summoned by city officials that afternoon, the horror on their faces said it all. She what? One of them gasped, holding a clipboard with budget notes. This woman rerouted HOA water into a hospital? Their lawyer showed up pale and shaking and immediately began distancing the HOA from Karen's actions. She acted alone, unilaterally, illegally. We will not defend this. But it was too late. The HOA insurance? Cancelled. The community? Facing a class action lawsuit from the hospital. And Karen? She was being served with a personal lawsuit by one of our ER nurses whose car had been totaled in the flood. Then another from a patient's family who missed a critical appointment. And another. By the end of the week, the word lawsuit might as well have been tattooed on her forehead. The HOA board held an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to strip her of her title. Her front yard sign that once read, HOA president, keep standards high, got yanked out by a teenager with a skateboard and chucked in a trash bin. And the final twist? Her property sat on land leased partially from the county. You guessed it, hospital land. She had no legal right to even restrict access to the sidewalk where she'd been threatening patients and nurses. She wasn't just a Karen. She was a tenant on government land, starting a war she never had the title to fight. As she was officially evicted from her HOA leadership and hit with 4 separate lawsuits, she finally issued a public statement. It was awkward, legalistic, and filled with passive-aggressive blame. But no one cared, because the damage was done. And justice? Served piping hot by firefighters, city engineers, and a whole hospital that refused to back down. So next time someone tells you HOA power trips aren't dangerous, just show them what happens when one Karen tries to flood a hospital. She didn't just lose her title. She drowned her own reputation. And if you want more HOA drama, justice served, and stories where the lawsuits fly faster than HOA fines, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You ever wake up thinking the worst part of your day will be running out of coffee creamer? Yeah, I wish that was the worst thing I dealt with. Instead, I watched a shiny, brand new Mustang plow straight through my flower beds, and behind the wheel, Karen's spoiled, grinning son. I stood there, barefoot in my pajamas, blinking at the wreckage like my brain refused to catch up. The engine was still rumbling, ripping through the quiet morning like some kind of mechanical growl. Petunias, roses, the little lavender bushes I'd planted in memory of my mom flattened. He revved once more, like it was a joke. Are you out of your mind? I yelled, stepping off the porch. The door to the Mustang popped open, and out stumbled Braden, Karen's golden boy. 18, useless and fueled entirely by Monster energy drinks and TikTok clout. He wore a hoodie that probably cost more than my entire landscaping budget and looked at me like I was the inconvenience. Oh, relax, he muttered, chewing gum with his mouth open. It's just plants. My jaw clenched. My hand shook. That was my garden, kid. Do you even realize? Before I could finish, I heard that shrill, unmistakable screech. Don't you dare raise your voice at my son. And there she was, Karen 1, hot roller hair, sunglasses on her forehead like a tiara of delusion. Her sister, Karen too, trailed behind in flip-flops and a bedazzled, blessed t-shirt. Braden was just testing out his new car. Karen too chimed in like some twisted Greek chorus. And your yard is way too close to the curb anyway. I blinked. Excuse me? Karen 1 stepped in closer, all finger-pointing and fake perfume. If you hadn't cluttered your front yard with those bushes, this wouldn't have happened. We could sue you, you know? That was when something in me snapped. I don't know if it was the mention of a lawsuit or the way she looked at me like I was the trash on her lawn, but I exhaled slow and cold and I smiled. Not out of amusement. Out of calculation. Oh, you're gonna sue me? For your son crashing his car onto my property. Karen too scoffed. We already called our lawyer. And we know the city codes. That garden of yours? It's illegally extended past the sidewalk line. Braden's got dash cam footage. That's when it all clicked they planned this. I'd heard whispers from the HOA meetings. The passive-aggressive comments about how my house didn't fit the aesthetic. Karen and her sister had been gunning for me ever since I refused to sign that bogus fence ordinance last fall. And now, an orchestrated attempt to set me up. But what they didn't know was I'd installed cameras last spring. High-res, night vision, full audio, because I knew something shady was coming. And my neighbor across the street? He was a retired cop. Sat on his porch every morning with a coffee and binoculars. So I turned to Braden. You got dash cam? Cool. I've got 6 angles of you doing donuts in front of my mailbox before this. And guess what? That illegally extended garden. I pulled out my phone. Tapping the city permit app. Was approved last month. Karen's smug smirk twitched. And then the sweet sound of sirens. See, while they were busy threatening me, I texted Officer Daniels across the street. Told him I had a trespassing and property damage incident in progress. He didn't even need to drive, just walked across the street. Badge out, voice calm. What's going on here? He asked, eyeing the tire tracks through my daisies. Karen lit up like a flare. Officer, thank God. This woman is harassing our son. He's a minor. He was just driving and she jumped out screaming. Daniels raised an eyebrow. Minor? He's over 6 feet tall and driving alone. That Mustang registered to him? Karen hesitated. Well, technically it's in my name. Which makes you liable, he said, his tone now flat. And this footage she sent me? He held up his phone. Shows your son driving erratically, spinning out, and entering private property. That's reckless endangerment and destruction of property. Braden's gum fell out of his mouth. You can't do this, Karen hissed. That camera footage is forged. It's not even admissible. Oh, it's real, I said, barely containing my grin. And the footage's metadata? Timestamped, GPS locked. Want to test it in court? Because I'm already preparing a lawsuit of my own. Daniels nodded. We'll need to impound the vehicle for evidence. Karen shrieked. No, you can't tow it. It's a limited edition. My husband paid 50 grand. But it was too late. Tow truck already rolling up. I swear I saw Braden tear up as the hooks clamped onto the undercarriage of his precious Mustang. As the car was pulled away, the entire street stared. A few neighbors even filmed it. One lady clapped. Karen was still fuming, mouth open, sputtering threats. We'll get you for fraud. You'll see. Your HOA will hear about this. Daniels turned to her. You know, threatening false lawsuits could be considered harassment. And if those documents you submitted to the HOA claiming she broke code were forged. Karen's face drained of color. He continued, calm and devastating. That would be HOA fraud. Might want to get your facts straight before this becomes a bigger problem than a few crushed flowers. She went silent. For once. Just a stiff, shaky breath as she grabbed her sister's arm and stormed off, dragging a stunned Braden behind her. I watched them go, heart pounding, hands still trembling, but this time not out of fear, out of righteous fury. I stood my ground, kept receipts. And karma? Well, it had impeccable timing. A week passed. The tire tracks were still faintly visible in the dirt, Like scars on a wound not yet healed, but the garden? It was coming back to life. I replanted every crushed bloom, every torn sprout, with purpose. And every time I dug my hands into the soil, I thought of Karen's face when the tow truck dragged that Mustang away like it was garbage left out too long. But karma wasn't done yet. Turns out, Karen's fake HOA complaint about my illegal garden extension had been accompanied by altered documents permits she forged to make her argument look stronger. I didn't even have to report it. Someone on the HOA board, sick of the sisters' drama, tipped off the city code office anonymously. It triggered a full audit of her past complaints. And guess what? 3 other homeowners had received forged violation letters, too. The city launched an official investigation. Fraud. Forgery. Filing false claims under a homeowner association's name. It snowballed faster than I expected. When she was served, it wasn't subtle. A city official in a bright yellow vest walked right up to her front porch while she was out yelling at a delivery driver and handed her the packet. I watched from across the street, coffee in hand. She tore it open like a banshee, eyes scanning. Her face twisted not just with rage this time, but something deeper. Fear. Pure, ego-shattering fear. Because it wasn't just a fine. The city was recommending criminal charges, and the HOA board had voted unanimously to suspend her involvement. That meant no more vote stacking. No more anonymous rule changes. No more power. Her sister tried to rally support, went door to door, claiming I was running a smear campaign. But most neighbors shut the door in her face. Some even filmed her and posted it online under the hashtag #KarenSistersUnhinged. You could hear Braden in the background yelling, "Mom, just stop." The Mustang stayed in impound. Braden couldn't get his license reissued without paying the damages, and Karen refused to waste money on that ungrateful brat. Guess spoiled golden boys lose their shine pretty fast when mommy's wrapped up in a city lawsuit and public humiliation. Me? I sleep better. My garden is blooming again, and this time, I put up a small sign in front of the lavender. Rebuilt stronger. Like me. So if you're ever dealing with entitled Karens, remember, keep records, keep receipts, and never underestimate the power of truth, timing, and a well-placed camera. Oh, and if you want more HOA karma, neighborhood justice, and wild lawsuit drama like this, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You won't believe what happened the week after this.